Hi, everybody. Welcome to MeetWP, the first WordPress online meetup group. We are coming to you live today from all over, from San Francisco, Chicago, Milwaukee, etc. Today we have speaking with us James Jacoby, who's going to be talking with us today about contributing to WordPress and BuddyPress. So before we begin, just want to tell everybody sort of how this idea came about and how we're going to see it growing. Andy Nathan is is actually the person who came up with the idea here at WordCamp Chicago. So Andy, can you tell us a little bit about how this got started?
Yeah, absolutely. And what happened was that it was actually during Andy, John, and Dusty's presentation on building communities. They were talking about how to create a local community for WordPress. And one of the things that I was thinking about at the time was I was actually doing something with I have a social media community on Google Plus, and I thought, well, that sort of seems like a cool interlude to using it for WordPress. Maybe we could actually create a full networking event on WordPress and actually have people get together and sort of like what you do offline, just put it online as well. And that's sort of what I brought up to Andy and Dusty, and they said, yeah, let's go with it. And it's what you're seeing here today, and we're getting people involved, and we really want people to start connecting. And as we keep growing, we're going to be adding more to the group. One of the things that we're looking to do is we want to get people connecting so they can actually network with each other. And you'll start seeing that with the chat that you have. We'll start adding stuff like BuddyPress. And as I was saying that, I actually heard like a car alarm going off in the street. You actually can know we are in the city. So.
Cool. All right, so we have a few of us on. There were originally supposed to be more, but we've been having some technical difficulties. So just everybody introduce who you are, and then we'll introduce James Jacoby last, since he'll be the one talking. So just to start with, my name is Andy Christian. I work with a company called Tadpole out of New York. I'm also an organizer for WordPress NYC and a couple of other things going on in the community. Andy, again?
Yeah, I'm Nathan. I help businesses with their online content. I'm a blogger. I blog for 3 years every single day, and that I'm doing. And thank you. My computer's slow. I'm just looking at the stream here on MeetWP.
All right, Dusty?
I think you need to get a Mac there, Andy.
Ouch. Yeah.
I'm the non-Andy of the organizers that are in here right now. My name is Dustin Filippini. I'm a developer for the Orion Group in Milwaukee. I also run the Milwaukee WordPress Meetup, which coincidentally is going to be happening immediately following this. And I also run the WordCamp Milwaukee. So that's about me. We're looking forward to doing some great stuff with this. Hopefully people enjoy it. We're also going to eventually be releasing this as a podcast too, so you guys can listen to it later on your iPods and your iPhones and all that too. So next, we got Scott on here too, who doesn't have a video, just a picture of himself. Scott's also one of the organizers. You want to go ahead, Scott? And there's Scott.
There we go.
For a second, there was Scott. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm here.
You've been popping on and off.
Yeah, so I figure this static picture is better than my mug, my real mug. But yeah, so like Dusty was saying, we actually worked together, and in 2012 and 2013, we've done the WordPress Milwaukee conference, and we take care of the monthly meetup as well. So I just love this online WordPress meetup, and I think it's just a wonderful idea for people to connect.
You can tell we're live.
Next up.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay, now on to the guest of honor.
Absolutely. So with us we have James Jacoby, lead developer of BuddyPress and BBPress. Also works with Automattic as their chief of alliteration. So John, if you want to give yourself a little bit more of an introduction beyond that, go right ahead.
Sure. Hi. Thanks, guys, for having me on as like your first inaugural MeetWP online meetup. It's kind of awesome to be here right now.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. So when you guys had first sort of approached me to talk about you know, contributing and building communities and all that stuff. I mean, I can actually remember when we were talking or like watching you guys come up with this idea in Chicago, because a lot of interesting questions came up, specifically about building communities, and and a lot of the time, I think people sort of forget that contributing to WordPress is more than code. It ends up being like uh, design or community outreach or just wrangling of tasks and projects and people, or just like a lot of different things that don't necessarily just mean writing code. And the community part of it has always been pretty fascinating to me, especially in WordPress, because WordPress as a piece of software doesn't really focus on the user at all, right? It's always about content. It's always about what you write and what your site looks like. But it's not really a whole lot about like who you are. You sort of have to turn your WordPress site into that, uh, which is where sort of like my passion for building BuddyPress has kind of always been. And like when I originally found WordPress, way back in 2007 now, I really didn't use it that much and was sort of confused at like why it was supposed to be so good, and started sort of hacking it, right? Like started patching it, started making plugins, mostly just out of not liking the way that it worked. And over time, sort of that's like my evolution into contributing. And and I think that like contributing to WordPress core right now is pretty overwhelming if you're new. Like if you're coming into this as uh, like a new user and you can identify things that you don't like or things that could be better, uh, it's a little bit more difficult now than it used to be to influence change. It depends on, I guess, what the dev cycle is, what it is that you notice, how involved it is that you can afford to be, but I think that the simple little fixes go a long way. And a lot of the times when you take a look at something in WordPress that you're like, well, media could be better, and you're like, well, media is huge, right? Like media has so much involved and it touches so many pieces of WordPress core that when someone says, I don't like the way that media works, being the person to wrangle such a huge project is really difficult to try and like contribute to that because it's just so much work, just lots of time and effort goes into that. But if you're like, this gray doesn't look right, or this documentation isn't right, or these rounded corners don't fit anymore, lots of little, really tiny changes can go a really long way. And that was how I started contributing to WordPress core myself, was just noticing sort of funky UI that I didn't like borders that weren't complete, or borders where like they didn't match up just right, or the like what tab was sort of a different shade of gray versus like the body was another shade of gray. And it's just like those little things where I go, well, that probably isn't intentionally like that. And they were easy one-line fixes. And then everything else that I did was mostly just plugins because I found it a lot easier to write code, to learn that way, to experiment with things that didn't like break WordPress core itself. And plugins like WP Multi-Network, the post type switcher, BBPress, BuddyPress, other plugins that that people end up sort of seeing a need for and using, end up sort of naturally having other people that use it that identify bugs or ways to improve it, and end up just kind of naturally contributing, even if it's translations or UI fixes, because I am not necessarily a designer, although like I really love designing things. Like calling me a designer sort of directly insults people that are like really, really good designers. So yeah, and I think like the other part that makes contributing to WordPress or any part of it, not just WordPress, but BuddyPress or BBPress, any of them, is there's just like a lot of different areas where you could potentially fit, where you can influence change. And not everyone sort of knows what it is that they're good at or what they want to do right away. And you know, it wasn't too long ago where like a web developer needed to do everything. You sort of needed to do the design, you needed to build the site, and you needed to get some preliminary content going, and you sort of had to have a content strategy, and you had to have all this like responsibility that I don't think you need to have anymore. It's actually sort of a really nice time in the WordPress ecosystem to specialize in some things, to be really good at UI, to be really good at architecture, architecting plugins, or to be a good project manager. And these are like all things that individual pieces of WordPress will always need. Design needs a project manager. It needs someone to do the design. It needs someone to wireframe things. Architecturally, the same thing. It needs someone to sort of mock up some of the code to get a good like working first pass, and then someone to come in and refine it, someone to write the PHP doc, someone to clean it up and make sure that it's actually sort of pluggable in a way that plugins can use it. Like all of these things are not one person's responsibility anymore. So I think the easiest way to sort of break down what is like the easiest way to get contributing to WordPress specifically right now, because there are just so many of us that are doing it, is to pick a thing that like you really are passionate about, and try to be really good at that thing. Once you sort of know what it is that you enjoy doing, I think your enthusiasm and your ability to just like deliver really awesome results increases, and people recognize that. And that's what I think is like the other important part is, if it's not rewarding and it's not fun, then people are less likely to stay involved and stay contributing. And when you're good at something or when you're really passionate about it, people tend to enjoy that. They kind of want to be around it and they want to see more of it. And people, I think, in general, want to like help other people succeed. And that was a lot of it with me, with like my sort of personal story, even specifically with BuddyPress, is I just really love working on it. Like it's just a fun project, and the team behind it now with Boone, Paul, and Ray, and even some of the other like long-time contributors, Tammy Lister, Hugo, some other people in the forums, and just like people that sort of come and go and patch randomly throughout the years. It's just a really fun project, and it's always been rewarding, and that's why I sort of keep coming back to it over and over again. Not that I ever really leave, but it's always sort of like momentary hiatuses where you're like, well, we'll work on something else. But it's always really nice to see like how people are using it, and to see how people are like wanting to use it and patching it so that they can use it in sort of unique ways. And I don't know. I think sort of jumping from idea to idea, it's also pretty important to like not be gun shy about whatever it is that you want to contribute. There's just like a lot that needs to be done and a lot of ideas that people have, and sometimes it's just difficult to execute on those ideas, and even just hard to find where is best to execute. And is it the forums, or is it on Track, or is it the Ideas forum, or is it on the Make or on like the Make site? Do you do it on Twitter? Do you ping someone directly? This is like a lot to just like a lot of different channels that you could take. You ping someone in IRC, and 9 times out of 10, you usually do it wrong. At least in my experience. There's always a different way to address something or to get involved in something, and I think that it's important to just know that you're like going to make mistakes all of the time, and that they're not really mistakes, but they're definitely like there's always someone that will be more experienced or sort of more knowledgeable about something that will be there to like help you improve whatever it is that you're doing. I think like another example, like my own personal history is, it's like when I was first like patching WordPress stuff, I had a tendency to like really patch like huge, enormous blocks of code because I would just get sort of caught up in the moment and refactoring something. I'd be like, look, here's this bug, and I fixed it with like this 500-line diff. And then someone like Peter Westwood would come through and go, this doesn't need to be this. It could just be like a 2-line fix. And it took time to dial it in and understand that what like the WordPress core team really wanted was a like a quick fix in and out, something that touched very little lines of code. And I was just like not used to that. It was at that point I was sort of used to being my own developer and consulting and contracting and solving all these problems on my own. And when you start switching into like a project that impacts millions of people, that has a team of people already working on it that are experienced and have sort of expectations, that it's sort of important to try and meet those and try and work within the boundaries that they have and the expectations that they have for how the project is supposed to be managed. And so I wasn't always good at that, especially within like the established community that WordPress sort of already had back then. And it gets exponentially more difficult, I think, with user testing and trying to make like some data-driven decisions and like one UI change, even like the if you for anyone that hasn't looked at WordPress 3.6, the menus UI is changing a little bit. It's not super drastic, but even changes like that are inspired by testing and like user testing and feedback. When those changes go in, it's not just one person who's contributing and changing those things. It's like a team of people at this point now, and I think that's like good, but it makes it more intimidating to contribute. So I think it's important to just not be scared to do it. Even like WordCamps, I think like a lot of people like go to their first WordCamp and they're afraid to speak. They like go to one and sort of see that it's like very casual and very fun, and then eventually like speak at their next one. And I did the same thing. I mean, I went to where like the Bar Camp / WordCamp Miami is like sort of did it wrong back then, but it was before there was like stricter sort of guidelines. So it was a Bar Camp Miami on the same weekend in the same venue, and I was like, oh, well, I'll go. It seems fun. And met Mark Jacoby there, met David Bissett there. David was talking about BuddyPress, which I thought was kind of awesome. And I was like, okay, well, I'll probably speak at a WordCamp then. And spoke in New York and spoke in Orlando, and was hooked. I mean, the community is sort of, I don't know, it's fun, it's nice. It's always been rewarding and a good time, and just meeting lots of really awesome people. And I think getting over that first WordCamp intro, like sort of a wasted WordCamp if you just go and you don't speak, right? You don't help fold some T-shirts, you don't hand out badges. It's like way cooler stuff to be doing other than just sitting in a chair. So I don't know. I think contributing to WordPress is like one of those things where it's always about what you do. It's about execution, right? It's about like doing stuff, and it's also about like doing stuff that you wouldn't normally volunteer to do, like standing around and working in a happiness bar, or folding T-shirts, or handing out swag, and it's like a lot of stuff. And people forget some. Well, maybe don't. Maybe people don't forget, but I think it's easy to forget that. Like your reputation relies on like what it is that you're doing and what your accomplishments are. And if you go to a WordCamp and you work all weekend and you just crank stuff out, people will remember that, like be thankful for that. And it's the same thing with patches on WordPress core. It's the same thing with design, with mockups, with user testing, with everything. So I think it's just emphasizing doing stuff, just doing whatever it is that you can do. like even to that end, on the BuddyPress project, you're like a prolific contributor. And her WordPress.org name is MercyMe, MERCIME, and she is super amazing. She's all over Track. She's all over UI. She's all over the support forums helping people. She's in the Codex contributing, and she's just nonstop. And like, if she needed anything, I would be the first person to make sure that she was covered. Like if her computer died, how do we get you a new machine? It's just like contributions like that speak for themselves. And I've never met her in person. We've never spoken on like the telephone. We've never had like a Skype conversation outside of chat. But she's amazing, and it's like those kinds of like that kind of execution that really ends up making a difference in like the WordPress community as a whole. So yeah, I feel like I've sort of been talking for a while, but do we have questions or anything that have come up yet, or no?
Yeah, well, the one thing that's come up in the chat so far is if you could talk a little bit about what are the specific ways that non-developers can be helpful, because we know that that contributing to core is something that developers can do, but what can non-developers get involved with?
Sure. I think a really good place to start is almost always in the support forums themselves. You're sort of in a place to be able to share your experiences and whatever you've learned and whatever you know. You sort of have to assume if you're in the support forums looking to try and help people that you're probably already an expert, at least more so than several other people that you have the opportunity to help. And once you understand like where you fit in the forums, or you're able to see what it is that you're really good at helping with, the forums are like a good stepping stone to see that, oh, like I'm really good at like reviewing people's code, or I'm really good at giving people design feedback, or it's like a pretty easy way with like very little commitment and low expectations to sort of start looking at where a non-developer could potentially fit. And on top of that, like even looking like a perfect example would be something like BuddyPress or BBPress, where like the default themes and templates that those projects come with are they're okay. They're pretty skeletal, but that's that way on purpose. And there's always sorts of opportunity to redesign or re-implement the way that like the default installation of what those two pieces of software look like, and I mean, those projects too also have like a really low barrier to entry on purpose. There are like less people contributing. There are less eyes on a lot of the things that the communities are doing. So pretty much anywhere, but the forums are a good start. The other part of it would be like a local meetup. Meetups are awesome. Like I met Dusty through the Milwaukee meetup, and like it's like a huge way to contribute without being a developer or necessarily a designer. You just have to have the passion and the drive to find a venue, to organize the meetup, to get people together, to find someone to buy a couple of pizzas, and just get a meetup group going. It helps if you're sort of like already passionate about WordPress, because that usually shows through. But yeah, tons of ways to do that. I mean, when we started the meetup in Miami, sort of in the early days, it was mostly just because there was like an awesome barbecue place right down the street from my apartment, and I just got sick of going by myself. So it was just like a reason to get WordPress people together to like just talk about WordPress. And eventually it turns into something more and more structured. But they always start pretty small. And but it's important to do it, right? It's important to just put yourself out there and see what you're able to accomplish with like very little commitment. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways. that are just outside of code. But yeah, it's the same rules apply. Just like don't be afraid to give it a shot and see what happens. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You try something else and you iterate, you experiment.
Cool. I'm looking through the chat for questions here. You've actually been very succinct about everything you've talked so far. So there are a lot of questions coming out. One person actually asked, how do you actually jump in? Like, what do you suggest to somebody who's a little bit, sort of nervous to just jump in because they're afraid they're going to be, their ideas are going to be rejected or something like that?
It's a good question. I mean, selfishly, my first answer is whatever it is that like you want to do, like to contribute in the WordPress community, do it on BuddyPress or BBPress instead. Like if you're concerned about like being embarrassed, like you have there's like an opportunity to make a bigger impact on those two projects. Because there are like less people paying attention, like less people contributing, and less people doing stuff, and you have an opportunity to make like a very large impact, like by doing like very little. And it also like I'm willing, and like anybody else that's on either one of those teams, like super focused on trying to sort of like raise the next generation of contributors. There are like tons of people that might be sort of gun shy or like don't really know where to fit or what to do. It's like I want to mentor those people. Like I want to make sure that like anyone who's maybe a little bit worried about it has a comfortable place where they don't need to be worried about it. And if that is not what you're looking to do, contributing to the BBs is like not an answer to you, then I think it's just getting over the fear, right? It's like when you're first learning how to dive into the water, like you are like, well, there's no way I'm going head first into anything. I'm going to smash my skull, and I'm going to probably end up hurt. And like you dive into the water, and you're like, oh, it's awesome. And like you figure it out, and like you're not scared anymore. And it's like it's easy. Like everything is scary at first.
Yeah.
But it's actually pretty painless, and you get used to it.
So could you walk us through sort of step-by-step what contributing to core looks like, even as a developer?
Ooh, sure. A lot of stuff happens typically in one of two places, or both eventually, but it's either we still use IRC, Internet Relay Chat, on Freenode for a lot of discussion and sort of scoping and road mapping and sort of figuring out what typically what the loose plan is for release cycles or sort of tickets and individual things. So you can find the IRC channels and the list of them and everything they're all over the internet, so you can find them pretty easily. But IRC is sort of awesome for just the groups of people that are like just the groups of minds that are available for asking questions and discussing stuff. The other place where things happen a lot is on Trek, and we use Trek, which is just another like open source piece of software. You can sort of see WordPress as core.track.wordpress.org, and Trek is sort of like has a bad reputation for being a very confusing piece of software. And I think that it is at first. Like the new user experience of Track is not very great. It's like a lot of it isn't super obvious what it is that you're supposed to do. But it's basically just a project management platform. You sort of set milestones and dates for when you would want to accomplish those milestones. There are a bunch of components or categories for like what issues you would open that you could have. Like it could be an enhancement, it could be a bug, it could be just a long-term task. And a lot of the discussion regarding any individual sort of initiative happens on Track. So a lot of screenshots get uploaded, wireframes get uploaded there, any user testing data, code changes and patches go on Track. And if you're not familiar with Track, or you're like afraid of Track, it would very much behoove you to become familiar and get comfortable with it. It's not like, again, it's not like the greatest piece of software, but I've learned to love Track. Like, I embrace Track a lot. Previous to when I started at Automattic, I used to set up Track instances for clients, like as like a subdomain on their own WordPress site that we were building, and sort of go through like a training session to have them like use Track to manage the project instead of like talking on the telephone or sending emails, sort of having all these brainstorming sessions and ideas. Because it really helped, open up tickets for issues and categorize them, put them in milestones. Clients would be able to see sort of the status of everything that was going on and all of their ideas, and then sort of helps them wrangle themselves in when they go, oh, we've opened 100 tickets and there's no way that like 1 or 2 people can do all of these things. But for WordPress, like a big project where you've got teams of volunteers and contributors that are working on a bunch of different things, Track actually, I think, still works pretty well. You still have to search around. You still have to sort of narrow down what it is that you're looking for. But it's like anything else, right? Like if in order to find what you're looking for, you have to search for it. It doesn't just appear in front of you. Rarely. And I think just like getting used to using Track is sort of like a huge deal.
So on that note, John, we've got a question from the chat about how would you actually go about getting familiar with Track, because it is a very daunting piece of software.
Also a good question. Thank you, K. Adam White. So it's not easy, I don't think. And so here's like when I still do this. This is like I have like a problem with opening tickets on Track, because by the time that I get to the point where I need to file a bug or want to fix something in WordPress, I've already sort of narrowed down what I perceive the problem to be, and already have like a first pass at a patch at what I think fixes that problem. Which means that when I go to Track and I create a new like problem or a ticket, that I fail to sort of like very precisely define what the actual problem is. I sort of say like, this thing is broken, and then in my description of a Track ticket I say, this thing is broken and here is how I fixed it. But I never really say like, what is it actually breaking? Like, what is the result of this being broken? And like, how do you go through duplicating this brokenness of it? So I think part of using Track and like going into it new and having not used it previously, especially in a project like WordPress, is even opening a really, really good ticket is contributing. And it's almost better if you open a really, really good ticket and don't have a patch on it than have a really crappy patch, or having a really good patch and like a crappy bug report. And I'm notoriously bad at this. So it's like not always an easy thing to do, but getting really good at, or sort of thinking through what the bug is that you found or what the enhancement is that you want to build on Track, and sitting down and really thinking about like how to best communicate those problems, and then just going to Track and hitting the link that says new ticket, and then just creating tickets and watching how like the core team or other contributors manage your ticket, I think is really helpful. A lot of the times, some of this like feedback is not always, I don't know. Sometimes, I guess, I hesitate to call it like not nice, but a lot of the times it's not. Gosh, what did Scott Taylor say? Like Scott Taylor said when we were talking about this recently. Like WordPress is like not. This is going to sound really bad, but his quote was that like WordPress is not a self-esteem project, right? So it's like when you create a ticket on track, like no one is there to like make you feel good about your ticket. No one is there to like tell you like you did a great job. They may tell you you've done a great job, but the point of it is to like improve the software and sort of like make it as good as we can all collectively make it, release after release after release. So sometimes someone may just call your ticket a duplicate and close it. And you'd be like, well, how was I supposed to know this was a duplicate? And you could have searched, but how do you find it? And no one is going to necessarily tell you what it is that like you could improve. And I think it's just over time you sort of learn what it is that the expectations are, and you sort of learn through using it. And again, selfishly, like if you're intimidated by track and you really don't, like you're afraid to sort of be embarrassed by messing it up, you can ping me directly. Like I'm totally okay with that. Or like open a ticket on the BuddyPress or BBPress tracks if it's like anything that's related to those two projects, or like if you're using those and you find an enhancement or something. I'm generally a little bit more on the like wanting to like seeing a track ticket that could have been better and then providing that feedback. But just learning how to like file a really, really awesome bug report will help you use track like just, I mean, super, super fast. Watching how people categorize it, where they put it, and you sort of just learn over time how the system works. The easiest way is just go in and start using it, I think. I don't know if that really answers your question very well, but
not really. But
yeah,
but yeah, but I think your point there is just kind of jump in and start using it is the best way, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. So there's a baby outside the window.
Yeah.
For those of you who are watching, John and I are actually in the same building, so.
So both,
anyway.
both of our heads turned to look
Right?
at the baby.
Right.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
Just real quick, because I know there's a few people in here who are not developers, so just for a second for them, for BuddyPress,
Sure.
can you just go through a little bit more in depth how to actually use? But if I'm starting up WordPress and I hear about BuddyPress, how would I get started? What were the best ways to actually use BuddyPress? Since you'd probably be the best person to talk to about
Sure.
BuddyPress.
Yeah. So BuddyPress is like it's gone through a couple of different sort of like design changes, but it's I think like the reason why you would want to use BuddyPress is because you want to shift the focus of your site away from just being a river of posts, and instead sort of emphasize the community of users that you have, or the community of blog authors that you have. And I mean, getting it started and using it is pretty easy now. It's just a plugin, right? So you download it through your dashboard. You install it through your dashboard, activate it, and we used to have this like really sort of complicated installation wizard, and we don't have that anymore. Now it's just sort of turnkey, and right out of the box you'll have user profiles activated and the activity streams activated, which sort of just very quickly lets you spool up like the very beginning of what would be potentially sort of a social network. If like for the people that haven't ever used BuddyPress at all or aren't super familiar with it, it's built like very similarly to the way that WordPress is. People have plugins for BuddyPress the same way there are plugins for WordPress, but the way that WordPress offers posts and pages and comments, BuddyPress offers activity streams, user groups, user profiles, private messaging, very primitive sort of like friendship requests, and it's designed to do that all sort of harmoniously. Each one of the components integrates with each other the way that they're sort of intended to, and you can easily activate or deactivate individual components without it breaking stuff. So it's like one big suite of social tools all wrapped up in one plugin. And then it also comes with what we have sort of called theme compatibility, which is BuddyPress tries pretty hard to work inside of any WordPress theme at all. So if it's a default theme, or if it's a theme that like you've built on your own, or a theme that maybe you've purchased from somebody else, it may not totally look super amazing, but it will work usually. And it's like the theme is coded using like any of the standard WordPress sort of coding standards. So.
I'm sorry. I apparently was asking the wrong part of the question, because I'm getting people like, Andy, that was completely off topic. So I'm gonna stop you before like they completely tar and feather me. I was more thinking just because you were talking before about the community management of WordPress.
Sure.
And I was looking at it more in terms of like, look, BuddyPress is a little bit different because it's actually for your individual blog, but like I meant more along the lines of like, if you're setting up a community, how would you set up a community on BuddyPress? I'm sorry, I thought I said that, but I said it wrong.
Yeah, so the activity streams is probably the most powerful component, I think, of BuddyPress. It works a lot like Twitter. Except like similar to Twitter, the conversation can sort of be infinitely hierarchical and like very sort of very threaded. And so I mean, setting it up, it should sort of kind of sets itself up once you activate it. You just have the activity stream that already works, and it's sort of easy to go. But I think the thing that you need to have already is like, you need to have an existing community that's waiting to socialize with each other. Once you have a community that already is like waiting for a place to talk, BuddyPress sort of fits in nicely to that. And in my opinion, and if you've like heard me talk, or if anybody's heard me talk about BuddyPress at like a WordCamp or something previously, like the thing I say a lot is that communities are like really difficult to manage, and like when you go from having a blog to like trying to power like a whole community, you end up really relinquishing a lot of control to your users that you would never do necessarily on a blog. So when your community starts posting weird stuff in the forums, you have to make a decision as to how you're going to moderate that content. And when two people are fighting, you have to decide how it is that you're going to handle that. Do you just let them duke it out, or do you moderate them? There's like a lot of decisions that have to be made on how you're going to wrangle your community. It takes a little bit more time and effort. And BuddyPress as a piece of software is really just designed to facilitate all of those things. But managing the actual community itself is very difficult, and it takes a lot of dedicated time. And the one piece of advice that I give over and over again is to sort of slow roll your community. Don't give them user groups and private messages and friendships and activity streams and forums and all these things at the same time, because they don't need it. Like there's no reason to give people 8 different methods to communicate with each other. Leave a bunch of the other stuff off, and just let your community sort of naturally grow into the social features that BuddyPress provides. Like when your users have finally had it with not being able to privately message each other directly, you can roll out private messaging with like a checkbox, and you save the setting, and now private messaging lights up and works, and you have saved the day having done like very little work. So I think that like starting off very small and only giving your community exactly what it needs at first is the way to go. Even if it's just profiles, right? Like it helps to see a face and understand like where they live and what they do and what their hobbies are or whatever. And while you can go to Twitter or Facebook or all those things, there's something nice about having it within like the dedicated walls of a network where everyone already sort of knows what the intention of that network is. If it's a social network about puppies, your profile fields may include the type of dog that you have, versus on Twitter, while I may post a bunch of pictures of my dog, nobody necessarily knows what kind of that it is or how old that he is. there's something very nice about getting that stuff out of the way. I see a question actually in the chat that's asking if BBPress is a forum or a social network or both. And so BBPress is just forums. BuddyPress is the rest. So BuddyPress is the community and social part of it. And you may not need both, right? Like I think that not all communities need both. Mm-hmm. And if what you want is a support forum, just a way for people to talk back and forth, you might not need BuddyPress at all. You can use BBPress, and it has, you know, a basic profile and all of the things that like a discussion forum would normally have. So, yeah, I think just slow rolling the community and rolling features out very slowly over time, sort of you get the best results from your community and from BuddyPress doing it that way right now, I think.
Cool. John, so there was a question actually asked in the chat a little earlier that I actually wanted to hear your answer to. So the question was something along the lines of what areas of the WordPress community are sort of in need for contributors. So if people are looking for somewhere where they can do the most good, where can they look?
Everywhere.
Just to get us sort of back on topic.
I think everywhere,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's really easy stuff, but
yeah.
But it could be anything. What would be a good one is.
I do know that GlotPress is if you speak more than one language is a good place to contribute.
Yep. Translations are huge.
Yeah.
And correcting translations, updating them, especially if it's a language that maybe hasn't been updated in a while or where a contributor has dropped off. If you can speak more than one language, that's a huge way to contribute. But it could be anything. I mean, I always lean on UI as a good place to start because you see it and you touch it every single day. So if you don't like an icon, you think an icon can be improved or it's not clear enough, that UI is like a super easy thing to contribute to. And there's a lot of UI in WordPress now that didn't used to be, but now that we've introduced the theme customizer and the drag and drop navigations UI, and media is like a brand new UI, and different meta boxes for settings and stuff. Where I think UI is like an easy place where there could be a lot of different contributions to improving or clarifying or simplifying a lot of WordPress core's UI. But it's not just UI; it's colors, if it's accessibility, if it's markup. And I'm improving the markup in WP admin. But those are things that I feel are easy intros because you can open up Inspector, you can sort of open up the files and take a look and see what needs to be improved. But user testing, just running your own user tests and seeing the results of them. Like usertesting.com is like a super easy way to just get started. Even just feedback from if you're a consultant and you have clients that are giving you feedback about something that they don't like. This is just anything. I mean, any of the areas that you would think, anything that you see in WordPress, the installation from the installation process all the way through to the posting experience. Those are every single area that could use contribution, and even outside of the software itself. Like documentation on the codex, just helping people in the support forums, general sort of evangelism even with meetups and everything else. I mean, the reason why WordPress is so good and why it's so popular is because it's sort of perpetually popular and growing because people sort of love the community and the software and like improving it. So. Pretty much any of those places are awesome, and then paying attention to the make sites. So make, which is make.wordpress.org. which is like relatively new. I think it's less than a year or so old now. They're getting to be a year old. Previously, like we used to have a development site that was conveniently and very nicely hosted on WordPress.com for it was just a P2, which is a theme by Automattic that used for just updates, and moved everything over to WordPress.org under like the Make network. So there's a bunch of different Make sites: make.wordpress.org/UI, /systems, /accessibility. There's a few of them. There's a bunch of them now, and that's where like the key players in the community and like the leaders of those sort of specific initiatives spend a lot of their time talking about what it is they're building, what they're working on, and that sort of helps narrow down like the individual sort of categories of like places you can contribute. If you just have no idea what it is that like is even sort of possible or how they're separated, the Make sites are probably a good place to start. So it's make.wordpress.org.
Cool. So it looks like we have just about 5 minutes left. So, John, is there anything in particular that that you want to end with, or anything that you want to make sure that you reiterate?
I'd like to know what you look to be getting from. I'd like to know what you'd like to be getting from WordCamp San Francisco this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yep.
So I was actually like really excited to see Andy Skelton's talk, but he couldn't make it, so it makes me very sad. Plus, I love Andy Skelton, so the fact that he won't be around also makes me very sad.
But we're going to get to see Mike Schroeder instead. So.
Exactly. and WPCLI, I mean, for the developers that are around, WPCLI is pretty dope. So that should be a pretty good talk. And if you've never used it, it's something pretty sweet. So you should maybe check that out also. But I apologize to whoever is like talking at the same time as Mike, because that's sort of probably kind of crappy to tell people to go to one session over another. But the contributor day on Sunday is usually my favorite. They're sort of like where the coolest stuff happens. I feel like the sessions are always fun, and sitting in them is like always like a neat experience. But it's always the stuff that happens outside of the official sessions that like where the relationships are made and where the fun really happens. So it's mostly the impromptu type of stuff is like my favorite part of all of those events, which is probably sort of a bad answer, but you know, it's like where you meet people and you sort of share your experiences and sit down, you know, share lunch with like a bunch of strangers and make some friends and see how they use WordPress. I think like that's the biggest part of it for me, is just meeting new people that I wouldn't have otherwise had the opportunity to hang out with. That events like WordCamp San Francisco that I think have like 1,000 ticket sales right now and something crazy like 500 on the live stream. You know, it's like meeting, like it's the opportunity to meet all these brand new people, and it's difficult to do that in the middle of a session. It's easier to do that in the breakout stuff. So that's my favorite part, I think. And in terms of like reiterating anything, I mean, you heard me say it a few times already, but it's just important to dive in head first and start doing stuff. I mean, we for a long time on BuddyPress.org, when Andy Peatling was sort of working a little bit more on WordPress.com, and I had a few clients back then before I had started at Automattic that were taking up a lot of time, and contribution was sort of low back then. So this is probably 2009-ish, and we had a lot of ideas and a lot of people that were in the support forums, like discussing like endlessly about what they think we should do with BuddyPress in ways that we can improve it. And there were a lot of people that were like offering to manage the project, but weren't doing anything. There was like lots of discussion, but like no one writing up any real plans or posting anything up. And my response to them is sort of still true today, which is the actions sort of speak louder than words kind of approach. It's just important to get stuff done and execute things and continue that momentum. So don't be afraid to start. If you are, I can help you. Anyone else can help you also. We're all friendly people. We want to be helpful and nice. And just crank stuff out. Just open source what it is that you're doing. Put it on GitHub. Put it on WordPress.org. Put it in Track. Blog about it. Just do things is super huge. And if there are like specific questions about like what that means, we're pretty fortunate to have like a huge community of people that that are pretty knowledgeable and experienced in almost all of the things that like people in the community would want to do. So lots of opportunity for help too.
Okay. Cool. We should probably wrap up now. It's almost 7 p.m.
Absolutely. So John, I want to thank you very much for speaking on our inaugural MeetWP meetup.
It was awesome to be here. It was really great to sit and talk about this because like lots of thoughts and ideas that lots of that come across. So it was awesome. I was really happy to be here.
Cool. And to everybody watching on YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you again. We are going to be doing these on the second Tuesday of every month. So the next one we have is August 13th at noon Central Time. We'll also be doing it again on the fourth Tuesday of every month at the same time as we're doing it today. So be sure to keep checking on our website, meetwp.me. We're going to be adding a lot of features. Join our Google Plus page, because if you want to join the Google Plus page to keep the conversation going in the meantime. And keep an ear out for more coming out of MeetWP.
If you're watching our live stream, I'd like to invite people to stick around in the chat because I'm going to embed the Milwaukee WordPress Meetup there too, so people can stick around and watch that too.
That's awesome.
And just to let everybody know, what was that?
Yeah, we have to actually. Web Design Pop just made a point about the MeetWP logo, and since Michelle is on here, we have to give her props for that.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle Schulp from MarkTime Media, also one of the organizers of WordCamp Chicago. She designed our awesome logo for us, so she definitely deserves some credit for that.
Tweet to her, tweet at MarkTime Media, say thanks, Michelle, awesome logo.
Yep. And then just to close out, do want to let you all know that, as I mentioned, our next meetup is August 12th at noon Central Time. We'll have the times all posted.
13th, isn't it?
Sorry, August 13th?
August 13th.
August 13th, sorry. Yeah, August 13th at noon Central. The website will be correct. And our speaker is going to be Chris Lemma with a topic to be announced at this time. But if you've ever seen Chris Lemma speak, he is an expert at everything related to WordPress and business, so you definitely want to check that out.
We have some great speakers lined up, and we'll be announcing those all on the site shortly too.
Absolutely. So with that, I think we are done. That's a wrap, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
We will
guys.
see you all next time.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.